Francesca. Francesca Grifo has a PhD in botany from Cornell University and has taught classes at Columbia, New York University, American, and Georgetown. She's a scientific integrity official at the EPA. And she's here to talk about her three great loves: biodiversity conservation, nature plant gardening, and birds. So please join me in welcoming Francesca tonight as she tells us about enhancing your landscape to entice birds.
Yeah, I'll just start. It's lovely to be here. I do have to add that this is the opinions expressed are my own and not of my agency. I think you all enough federal employees around that I have to say that. I do not represent EPA and I do not endorse products, right? That's the lingo. Anyway, it's really exciting to be here to do this. I am not going to give you an encyclopedic presentation, although it's got way too many slides, but not as many as some talks I've told. And I will try to just, get through them, and if not, and hopefully get through them, and if not, and hopefully leave time for Q&A. And you're going to tell me when I hit 45 minutes, right? So I can make a quick exit. So I'm going to put here. All right. I'm going to sit. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm visible. Hi, everybody. Yeah. I'm there. And Zoom, can somebody, I think the Zoomers can hear me, right? We know that. Yep.
Yep, we hear you fine.
Oh, I have to go to that for that. Oh, all right. I have to put it down here. Yeah. Well, I'll project better than I am right now. So basically, this is my journey. We moved here from New York City, and it was very exciting. And my first entree to this world was when my son's first grade class was farming butterflies to release into the wild. And I was like, oh no, let's not do that. Let's do a butterfly garden. And so I helped to do a butterfly garden at his elementary school, and I was hooked. So what I'm going to do tonight is give you just some principles, some practices, what to plant, what not to plant, and examples, and a lot of resources that hopefully will be helpful as you do your own journeys. So the upper right and the lower left are what my house looked like when we bought it and moved in about 15 years ago. Not really very pretty, not really very enticing, but for somebody from New York City, it looked pretty good. The first thing we did was, you see that giant driveway. Oh, sure. No, is that that was a stormwater runoff that the county eventually buried, which was a lovely gift to us. So the first thing, we put in the path, we put in the fence. And now what do there, I just hit it. And then we put in a pervious driveway and some stone walls. And on the right is what it looks like. Well, not quite yet. It'll look like that in about 2 weeks. The other thing that we did was we obviously had a second floor put on the house. It was built in Pennsylvania because we didn't want to have a giant footprint, but we definitely needed more space with 2 giant boys. So again, before and after. So the left is, again, what it'll look like in about 3 weeks. The plant that's in full bloom there is a elderberry. And the right is what it looked like before. Again, after, this is what the backyard looks like. Again, it was just plain dirt pan horribleness. And it's just been a real adventure to get it to this point where it really is many degrees cooler and quite wonderful. Again, in the fall, and on the right, again, a couple of weeks from now, actually that's July, because you can see the lobelias are in bloom. Go ahead and admit. And again, 2 more after pictures just to give you a sense of the landscape. The plant on the left, the phlox, is your best friend for native plant gardening because it just grows like crazy and spreads everywhere. Okay, so let me go. No, it's okay. So just to say, I don't live in some exotic, amazing place. I mean, I live behind the Glen Echo Fire Station. Obviously, I'm not that far from the Potomac River, but I'm right there where Sangamore Road comes up into Mass Ave. So to do this, you don't have to be someplace exotic. The sad thing is that my street used to have 15 more giant trees that you couldn't reach around. And instead you can see the McMansions across, the starter castles, I call them. I hope I don't insult anybody, but too bad. Anyway, they're across the street, and we lost a lot of our forest cover, but fortunately I've kept my trees. You can see my little house, and the trees behind me are 5 giant They're tulip trees and beech trees that were there in the yard, and I was lucky to inherit. In fact, that is why we bought the house, because we fell in love with the trees. So what is this rod fruit? I mean, right now, what I have is, I just looked last night on eBird. I have a yard list of 81 species, which I think is pretty good for regular old suburbia. I have 17 species that nest every year, 15 species of migrant warblers. That list has jumped since I have been teleworking and sitting on my second floor overlooking my backyard. And taking many breaks. People who know me know that I want to do in the middle of a meeting, say, sorry, bird break, because I hear something and I have to get out my binoculars and look. And I really regularly hear barred and great horned owls and see sharpshin and Cooper's hawks. The Cooper's hawks are a little bit of a cheat because my neighbors and I share chickens. And they do come in because of the chickens, I think. But the chickens are safe. They haven't gotten one yet so far. So why native plants? Why do this? The reason is, the main difference is that native plants, because they are native, create ecosystems, right? They are food, they produce food, they attract and house food, they are shelter, they are habitat. So let me tell you what I mean by all that. The first question, though, is native to where? What does native mean? And it can mean things both geographically and taxonomically. So geographically, obviously, native to the US, there's a lot. Native to Eastern US, native to the Mid-Atlantic, native to Maryland, to Montgomery County. Fortunately, we have the Maryland Biodiversity Survey, which has maps for everything, and it will tell you whether it's native to the county or to the state and so on, which is really, really a nice resource to have. So that's that. Then there's the genetic piece of this, the taxonomic piece. Now, why are these things easy to grow? Well, we breed them, typical ornamental plants are cultivated varieties. They're created to be beautiful, easy, drought tolerant, and so on. And some of this has now spread to the native plant community. There are a lot of native plant cultivars. You have to really look when you're buying something. I bought a columbine, which turns out to be actually from a species that's native to Colorado and not our local one, but it's really pretty. But it isn't native. So you have to really look very carefully and think about this stuff, because there are cultivars and so on. The gold standard for all of this, of course, is the ecotype. I mean, these are genetically distinct geographic varieties, and that is great if you want to be that sophisticated. But the thing that I think, and I always tell people, is yes, you should consider geography and taxonomy as best you can. But unless you really live adjacent to a protected area, which you really don't want to pollute with non-local stuff, get as close as you can to something as local as you can find, because native to Montgomery County, is obviously better than native to Maryland, which is better than the Mid-Atlantic and so on. But all of these are better than some exotic that you pick up someplace that you don't actually have any idea where it's from, right? So a non-native genus is better than a native genus is better than a non-native, and so on, I think. And obviously, ecotypes are great, but they're hard to find. We have a couple of nurseries around that do have them. Earth Sangha over in Virginia is one of the best ones for ecotypes, because they actually are doing this for restoration projects. So they're very careful about where their stuff, but it's Virginia. It's not Maryland, so it's not our ecotypes, but still it's better than something that's from far away. So if you live close to a natural area, I think you have to worry about this. If you don't, you do the best you can, because it's all better than that lawn that you currently have. So what do birds need? This is pretty straightforward stuff, right? They need habitat. They need resources, physical and biotic factors to support their survival, to support their reproduction, and so on. And that really is just shelter, water, and food. So what do birds not need? So let me just say a few things. I mean, birds obviously do not need alien species, right? That's not a good thing. An alien just is non-native from somewhere else. See if I can do this for you. There we go. Okay. While alien species may provide shelter and some even provide nectar, they certainly typically do not provide food for insects. And we all know that that's critical for birds, right? Is to have that food for insects. Imported plants bring diseases, right? Can you say Dutch elm disease, chestnut blight, dogwood anthracnose, and so on? I mean, obviously there are risks with those imported plants. And imported plants can become invasive. I mean, we're all familiar with a lot of these: Oriental bittersweet, Norway maple, Elaeagnus, which is autumn olive, and so on. Another thing that birds don't need are pesticides and herbicides. And again, I realize I'm preaching to the converted here, and you probably know all this, but when you lose the lawn, your need for chemicals drops dramatically. Mosquito Joe, in case you didn't know, is no friend of biodiversity. Maybe you can build a screen porch or buy a cheap screen tent, I know there's a lot of mosquitoes in the summer and it's awful, but obviously spreading that poison all over is pretty awful as well. That's why I have to say I don't work. I'm not representing EPA. So over time, though, it does get better. I'm amazed at how the insect numbers in my yard are down since I've started doing this. It's really quite wonderful. Leaf blowers are not what birds need, right? Fallen leaves do not kill plants. Fallen leaves don't sneak into your house and steal your jewelry. It's really okay to leave the plants on the lawn. It's amazing how many people bulk against this. Fallen leaves can replace mulch and save you money. They're habitat. They are pest control because that's where many of the arthropod predators live. They soak up and slow down water, which keeps your soil moist and reduces your erosion. They're fertilizer. And the statistics are just outrageous about what leaf blowers do. 1 hour and you could drive a 2017 Camry 1,000 miles for the same emissions. Lawns are not what birds need. Now, yes, we've all seen robins out in the lawn pulling a worm out of the soil, and that's fine. But lawns are water hogs. In the summertime, grass clippings make up almost a fifth of solid waste. Lawns provide no shelter. Homeowners, and this is a big one, apply 10 times more toxic chemicals per acre than farmers. So you can buy your organic produce all day long, but you can really do a lot just simply by not putting chemicals on your lawn. 25 to 50 million pounds of chemicals are used on lawns annually in the US. 17 million gallons of fuel are spilled each year just refueling lawnmowers. It's kind of astounding. And again, lawnmowers are a nightmare for emissions. So you want to lose the lawn. But how do you do this? How do you get started? How do you go? And the first thing is, it's not an overnight production, right? Inch by inch, row by row. I won't sing the song because I'll be off key, but you can assess your yard and your neighborhood. So the first principle of restoration ecology is whatever it is that screwed up the environment in the first place, you better get rid of that first before you go in and try to do your restoration. And essentially, doing your lawn with native plants, your yard with native plants is a restoration project. So what is it that means, what's there that you really should make sure that you do something about? So the first thing, of course, are there outdoor cats? If your neighbor has 6 outdoor cats and you're going to be attracting birds, is that the responsible thing to do? I'm not sure. Glass windows. If you have giant floor to ceiling glass windows, again, next month, we'll be all learning exactly what to do about that, which is a good thing. Traffic, right? Again, bringing birds in so they can get run over, chemical and other pollution. A lot of people, unfortunately, live in places where they are, homeowners associations or municipalities require leaf removal. So you need to know about that before you dive into this. You also need to think hard about how much time and energy and money you want to pour into this, right? Because it really can be a lot. So rather than being disappointed continuously in yourself, decide what it is that realistically you want to do and then be happy about that, right? If only life were so easy. But bear in mind that after a while, it's actually less work and less money. The next step is to really figure out who should stay and who should go, right? Are you going to go completely from lawn to garden? You have to figure out how you're going to remove your seed bank and the aliens and invasives above the ground, below the ground. The good news is you don't have to do it all at once, but you have to figure out what you're going to do. What are you going to keep? The question I get asked a lot is, oh my God, I love this plant. Can I keep it? You can. This is your yard after all, right? I admit I am a sucker for camellias. I had, 6 beautiful ones on the property when I moved in, and I have kept them because they bloom at a time of year when nothing else blooms and they make me happy. So yeah, they're not native. You're right. But I kept them. So you just have to decide what you want to do for you. Assessing your yard in the physical aspects of it is really important. You need to take a day and watch the sun and time it. You can buy really expensive gadgets that will do this for you, or you can take a day and watch the sun and have a little diagram and time it. Look at your soil. Maryland doesn't do soil testing anymore. They used to, but Penn State or the University of Delaware do it. It's pricey. It's about $17 a sample. I know because we just did a bunch, but it's really interesting and helpful, but not mandatory. You can probably look at your soil and say, yeah, it's clay. It needs more organic matter, right? Without a soil test. But you have to really think about that because some things will do fine anywhere, but a lot of things do need acidity in particular. Do you have a lot of slope and runoff? You may remember from that first picture, there was a slope in it that ran right across the yard. That turned out to be really important. Where does the water go when it rains? Where is there never water? Again, you got to be realistic about the impact of other creatures. If you have, two young boys who want to play soccer in your yard, maybe you need to wait a few years before you start this. That was what I did. But again, pets, deer, bunnies, moles, groundhogs, lots of things that can impact it. So what can you do? Where do you start? How do you deal with what's covered up there at the top is budget. One of the great things that we have in Montgomery County is Rainscapes Rewards. I don't know how many of you in the room know about that. Have you heard of it? Yeah, they're wonderful. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. They're really helpful. They're really smart, and they'll pay you up to $7,500 per property, which is, it won't cover the cost of what you're doing necessarily, but they'll pay you $5 a square foot for every square foot of lawn that you remove, $10 a square foot for a rain garden, and it helps. It all adds up. The key thing, though, is you have to go to them and get your project approved before, because they won't reimburse you after if they haven't approved the plan before. They will reimburse you for rain barrels even if they haven't approved that plan. Again, a small space is less time and less money. Maybe you start with 5 square feet, a few pots, whatever you think you can manage. I really like the rule of attrition. A lot of people have gotten hooked on this by that. What is the rule of attrition? When something that's not native dies, you replace it with a native. Inch by inch, row by row, right? Easy way to do it. You're going to do that anyway, and it's certainly better to replace it with a native. What kinds of plants are you going to put in terms of, are you going to use seeds, plugs? That thing in the bottom right of the slide is a plug. It's really lovely. They're deep and narrow, and they do really well. Transplanting giant plants is much harder than transplanting little guys. That being said, I'm terrible at seeds. I know this about myself. I can't get them to germinate, and once I have seedlings, I can't keep them going. But you may be great at seeds, and that's a really economic way to do this. Again, are you going to buy quarts or gallons? Are you going to buy potted or bare root? Bare roots are obviously less money, but not every single one will take in the way that almost every potted plant will take. Cuttings, trades, extras, anybody who's got a native plant yard, me included, we have constant extras because these things are really reseeding and growing and spreading. So anybody will have extras to give you. This one is key. If you're going to a plant sale, do not just walk in, because you will walk out having spent way more than you ever intended. Make a list, bring it with you, stick to it. Have I ever done this? No, I have never stuck to my list, but I always bring one. Again, think about the cost of soil amendments, rain barrels, stone, tools, all of that stuff. So you're going to make your budget. All right, this one, make a plan. No, you don't have to have a degree in architecture. This is a plan down here in the right. You just put the building in, you make it approximate, you put in where the plants are that you want to keep, you put in the hardscaping, which is just the stuff that you're not going to pull out, and so on. It's really important. You're going to sketch in what you learned about the sun, sketch in what you learned about the water, and so on. Another fun part of this is visiting places that have great native plant displays. I mean, one of those, of course, is the forest, right? You can just go out into any park and do that. But Adkins Arboretum, Mount Cuba, Bowman's Hill, the Museum of the American Indian and Natural History Museum all have gardens with a lot of natural history, native plants. And I'm a perennial photographer and keeping lists and getting ideas. Create a timetable. You can't do it all in one year. Figure out what you want to do first, figure out what you want to do each year. And, you don't want to plant trees and shrubs in the summer. You really have to do those now or in the fall. And I mean like now. Next month, end of April is almost too late. It's really hard because it gets hot so fast here. Think about hardscaping. You saw in my instance, we put in that, rock path. We put in a fence. We put in rock borders around all of the beds. The great thing is, I don't know how many of you have ever been to Tri-State Stone on what's it on? Seven Locks Road, but it's great. It's local Carderock stone. You can go, you bring your car, you can fill bags, you can shovel it in, or you can pay a small fortune and they'll deliver it, right? Either way. But it's great. You can get local stone, and that's probably one of the most economic things to do for boarders. Birds love changes in slope and topography, so having some swales and mounds and other things, if you've got a dead flat yard, is a good thing. What are you going to do about water and watering? Rain barrels, hoses, and again, providing shelter and cover and water. We'll get to that, but make sure that you've got hoses where you're putting in new plants, because otherwise you're going to hurt your back carrying large things of water. Okay, the good news is, after all of that, that there are fabulous, fabulous resources out there. I'll talk a little bit more about those at the end. I brought some books with me. I brought a couple of handouts with me, but we're going to put a handout with a ton of information on the website so that you can download a lot of this stuff and look it up. All right, so let's go back to the main question, which is, what do we want to do for these birds? What do they need? So they need shelter, water, and food. And the key here to all of this is to choose twofers and threefers, right? Plants that provide shelter and food for insects and host plants for butterflies. And, right, you want to get as many things into one plant as you can. It'll save you money, and it'll just save you your back less planting. So shelter. This is my brush pile in my yard. It looks different all the time because I'm constantly adding to it. You can see that brown, that's last year's Christmas tree that got tossed in there. So, you know, everything goes in there when I'm doing this. Now, you have to be careful if you toss invasives in there. I usually toss those on the driveway for a few days in the sun to kill them, and then I toss them in the brush pile, because otherwise I'm just reseeding my own yard. But, you know, logs, dead trees, wood piles, nest boxes, I'm not going to talk about it all because that's a whole nother talk. But all of these things really provide shelter. This, again, is also my yard. On the left, you know, just a log that I've left there, a stump that's covered with fungus that, you know, the woodpeckers, and I've even seen nuthatches that low on it. The right is a tree that I lost a couple of years ago. The tree guy thought I was nuts when I said, please just cut this back to 10 feet, 15 feet high and leave the rest. And he was like, you are crazy, lady. But I left it and I love it. And it's still there. At some point it may fall over, but it's not going to hit my house or my neighbor's house. So I figure, what the heck, might hit my car. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I put the picture of the pileated on there. He wasn't on for that moment. But the woodpeckers go crazy over it, as do the nuthatches and brown creepers and, I mean, all kinds of birds. All right, so birds perch, they sing, they nest, they feed their young. They particularly have fledglings that are kind of dangerously unstable in the spring when they first leave the nest. So you want to think about shelter for all of those. And you want to think about shelter in layers. And I'll just show you an example. So this in the front here, let me see if I can get this to work. I mean, these are forbs, right? They're just perennials. These are shrubs. It's elderberry, arrowroot, and Virginia sweetspire. And this is obviously a tall tree. But those layers are key for all of this. You also want to have things that are shelter for insects. Right now, I am just so crazy at this time of year because I want to get in and clean up my garden. Don't do it. Resist the urge, because it's in all that dead stuff is where all of your arthropods and insects are hiding out still. So you really can't, and you don't actually have to, because in a few weeks, it'll be hidden by the new stuff. But right now, there's this long ingrained thing in my gardening head that says, clean up your yard, clean up your yard. All right, so now we get to the pretty pictures. I'm done with all the yakking about that. These are shrubs. I'm just going to give you some of my favorite ones. Every single picture I will tell you in this talk, I took with an iPhone in my yard, just for the record, no fancy stuff. That's the great thing about plants. You don't need a big lens. The numbers in parentheses are the numbers of bird species that, according to the books that I have, use these particular species. So beauty bush, again, make sure you have American beauty bush and not the exotic one. It's great because those fruits are actually mostly water, and in the summer when it's dry and there's no water anywhere, those fruits are there, which is really good. Witch hazel in the middle. Spice bush, Lindera benzoin, you have to have two of them because they're girl plants and boy plants. But the great thing is that spice bush berries, they have a high fat content, so birds love them, but they're also a phenomenal substitute for allspice. I cooked my whole Thanksgiving dinner this fall using allspice berries instead of, spice bush berries instead of allspice. A couple more shrubs, serviceberry. There's several different Amelanchier species, shadbush, serviceberry, so on. They are just a mecca for birds. I mean, really, everything that I keep reading tells me, and my own shrub in my yard is very, very busy very quickly. Cornus, which is the dogwood family, a dogwood genus, is also a real hit, whether it's the flowering dogwood. This one is red osier, which has the red stems. There's also pagoda dogwood. All of them are really great plants for birds and are native. Hydrangea, an oak leaf hydrangea is another fabulous one, grows quickly, fills in spots. I just love it. I think it's just really pretty flowers. And you can see my husband's a beekeeper, so that's why you'll see beehives. We have some at the house and some down in Charles County, but anyway. Elderberry, I've already said, phenomenal shrub, grows really fast. That's the problem, is if you don't have a sprawling place for it to really grow and spread, you will have to go back and hack it back. But who doesn't have a bad day where you want to go out and hack back a bush, right? It's a great thing. So that's my elderberry. Calycanthus is Carolina spice bush, which is, I don't know how useful it is, but it's really pretty. I love the flowers, I have to say. I have a weakness for it. All the willows are really, really good for a lot of different bird species. Leucotho, this is in the same family as blueberries and, blueberries, cranberries, all of those things, rhododendron, azalea, all the same family, Ericaceae. And it's not one that's very common, but I had a corner of my yard that was dry shade that nothing would grow in, and this thing has filled it out. It's a slow grower, but it's now a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it started out as nothing. So I recommend it for that. Fringe tree, Chiananthus is another one I just love. It's beautiful. It is used by birds. It's another shrub to add more structure. These are my big trees in the backyard on the left. Beech, you can't see the tulip trees, but there's a flower from a tulip tree. Again, important one. Hummingbirds actually come to those flowers. They're kind of high up and you don't get to see them so well, but the hummingbirds do use it. Beech trees, which is the Fagus sylvaticum, 25 species. The nuts, the seeds, just the structure of them in the yard, I think is really, really important to bringing the birds in. And of course, forest pansy, what else do people call it? Redbud, which is Cercis canadensis, easy tree to grow, grows so fast everywhere. And then there's the volunteers. This oak on the right, I have a sense of what I think which oak it is, but it's never had acorns because it was a volunteer. It's now 20 feet tall. It's been a couple of, it grows really fast. And I love it, but I don't know which one it is. But the volunteers come. I've had all of my red buds, for example, are volunteers. Didn't plant them. They came from a neighbor's trees. What? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does create shade. That's the problem. Okay, so that's shrubs and trees and structure, right? So let's move on to water. I have 3 rain barrels, which are great. But puddles, bird baths, the whole 9 yards. You can look in a number of books and you can find all kinds of gadgets to create a drip and create water for birds. I have a little IV tube that comes out of my rain barrel and drips, and I can calibrate it, with the little thing that you can start it and stop it. I don't know, I had chemo many years ago and I kept it. I took one from the hospital, but anyway, and it's great. It's brilliant. It just drip, 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 and the birds love it. But you can you can look up and find a lot of different ways, but water really matters, especially obviously in late summer, but you probably all know this. I like the one on the right with the bucket hanging from the tree and the garage can lid. The key here though is never, not ever more than 2 inches deep, right? Because things will drown. This is my rain garden. You may remember there was that slope and it was outrageous. So finally I bit the bullet. Up on the upper right, you can see and on the left, I dug out a trench, built a berm because that was all just one flat straight slope. Found rain garden plants that would tolerate being flooded. As you can see on the left, it does get flooded. The water sits there and then slowly percolates down. But in the meantime, while it's sitting there, the birds love it. It is a bonanza for them when we get these heavy rains, and that fills up. Again, more grown in on the lower left, more grown in on the lower right. And here, pretty much fully grown in on the upper right and lower right. So it really does fill in quickly. That's the beauty of natives, is they really do. If they are in their place and they are happy, they really thrive very, very quickly. All right, food, fruits, foliage, pollen, nectar, insects, the whole 9 yards. As I said, you try to find plants that do more than one of these. So plants that produce nectar and pollen, plants that and host insects and produce seeds and berries and nuts. Plants to shelter prey. Again, the rotting logs are a source of food for all the things that live in them. My compost pile is a big popular place for my birds, and so are my beehives. Every summer, I sit and watch a catbird sit outside the beehive, grabbing bees as they go back into the hive. I don't know how he does it, he, she, but it happens, and it never seems to say, oh my God, I've been stung, right? It doesn't do that. So somehow the beehives are providing food. No other species have I seen do that. But I do put out the drone larvae, that after when you finish doing your things in the spring, and they all love that as well. But so do the chickens that live next door. I'm not going to talk about feeding stations. That's a different talk, but obviously you can supplement. But really, I have to tell you, I stopped a year ago feeding, or actually about a year and a half ago when we had the scare. I stopped, and I have not started up feeding again, and I still have my beautiful birds. I was quite surprised. I may start again, but I haven't yet. Okay, so I just want you to know that botanically, I know that seeds, berries, and nuts are actually all fruits. I know that, even though I'm stating it this way. And again, the threefold native plants. Here's the champions, right? Leaves for larvae, nectar, and fruits. Cherries. I have a giant volunteer black cherry. Sumac is a great one. Blueberries, elderberry. Elderberries are really cool because they're the host for cecropia moths. And all the different hawthorns, a species of crataegus, are all threefold plants. The other thing, though, is to think about the continuity of your food supply, because you want fruiting over the course of several months, or you want fruits that hold trees that hold their fruit. The most exciting thing that happened to me over my Christmas holiday in Maine was seeing 600 Bohemian waxwings descend on a row of crabapple trees that had held their fruit in the middle of December. It was awesome. So the ones that hold their fruit, that don't worry, and I know Cheryl, I don't know if Cheryl Hogue is on or not, but I know that she's got cedar waxwings that come and empty her fruit trees every year, late in the winter. Okay, so more about what to plant. One of my favorite books and one of my favorite people, even though I've never met him, is Doug Tallamy. His books are amazing. He's an entomologist. He writes very compellingly and interestingly about biodiversity. And his thing essentially is, it sucks out there right now for biodiversity, and you as a homeowner could actually make a dent. And I just think that's a beautiful thing, and I think it's true. So his thing is all about what are the plants that actually host insects, because we all know that in the spring, birds are feeding their young insects, right? But even the ones that normally eat seeds, a lot of them switch over. So he couldn't find, there's not a lot of work out there that's been done on this, calling all potential PhD students. But he looked at species of Lepidoptera, butterflies, and looked at as a kind of a proxy for insects writ large. And of course, Lepidoptera matter because they have caterpillars, and caterpillars are incredible bird food. So these are his numbers. I mean, the oak is the champion, right? 534 species of Lepidoptera use something in the genus Quercus. And again, I think he was just looking at the Eastern United States or Maryland. I don't know which, but it definitely was not the whole country. Willows, cherries and plums, birch trees, poplars, cottonwoods, crabapples, blueberries, right? It's just really clear that these are the things to have. So if you only have room, your old tree dies and you're thinking, what am I going to put in? Plant an oak. Although it may be several years before it produces acorns. But that doesn't mean that there aren't Lepidoptera on it. All right. So I think we've kind of gone through this, the high canopy, the oaks, the beeches, tulip trees, and so on, the understory. I don't have great pictures of vines, but I can tell you that, and you all know this, anybody who's ever been to Rock Creek Park to see warblers in that, behind the maintenance yard, those trees are covered with vines and covered with birds, right? We know this. Trumpet vine, virgin's bower, coral honeysuckle, Virginia creeper. Be careful. You do not want the Chinese exotic wisteria. You want American wisteria. Virginia creeper is great, but it can go right up a tree and envelop it and destroy it. So decide whether you want it to do that or not. You don't want just any honeysuckle. Most of them are invasive. Invasive just means it grows really fast and will take over your yard. But the coral one is the one that brings in the hummingbirds. Virgin's bower is really invasive, but it's really easy to remove. It's a clematis, and really pretty and smells good. All right, so let's talk about the things that are going to be on the ground. And these are, I could have had more time. I could have put them in a better order, but Anemonella thalictroides, I don't actually even know the common name. Anemone, I guess, but it's a really pretty thing. I bought a tiny little plug and it's now, oh boy, almost 2 feet across my patch. It's really grown. Foam flower, which is Tiarella, unkillable. Really unkillable, really, really great. Even in dry, lousy places, it will do sun, it will do, oh, you killed one? Okay, never mind. All right, never mind. I should have known. I have not killed one. Let's just say that, okay? And I've killed plenty of plants. Physostegia, I don't even know the common name. Ugh, gosh, sorry. But it is beautiful. It is
Obedient plant.
Obedient plant. Thank you. Of course, that's what it is. Thank you. It will take over. It grows really fast and really well. These, I had planted one clump on the other part of my yard, and suddenly they appeared and took over a whole nother part of the yard, but they're beautiful and they bloom in July. Not much blooms in July, so they're wonderful for that reason. Podophyllum, which is mayapple, great plant. Obviously, any of the milkweeds are really great to plant. One of my personal favorites, absolutely, is the local native Pachysandra. You don't have to put the exotic one in. It's called Allegheny spurge. It's that spotted leaves on the left. Doesn't have showy flowers or anything like that, but it's just really beautiful and very slow growing. It's taking me about 5 years to get to that patch. Anemone canadensis, another one that is just a really pretty plant. Right now, it'll be blooming in another week or two. Eupatorium, I love my Joe Pye weed. It is 5 feet tall and will take over, but again, it's easy to pull out. It's not one of those ones where you go crazy. And it is covered with butterflies in the spring and the summer when it blooms, which is probably in about a month and a half. And in the fall, when it produces all those seeds, I get goldfinch and all kinds of things on the seeds. Jacob's ladder, about to bloom now, or mine might be blooming. I should have checked. Penstemon, beard tongue, is that what it's called? Thank you, sorry. I'm doing pretty well, though, on remembering all these names. Although I greet them like old friends. But the beard, again, one that it's just a beautiful flower. Claytonia is spring beauty. These I actually dug up just in front of a bulldozer in woods near me where they were about to build a house. But the clumps are spreading and I'm really glad I went in. The guys yelled at me and I just told them to go ahead and call the police. But I took them. On the right is one of my other favorites. This is it's called Carolina Petunia, and it's Ruellia, and it is just beautiful and has done really well for me. Part sun, part shade, a lot of different places, but I just love it. Nodding onion, again, I will say I've never killed one. I would call it unkillable, but I could be proven wrong. Geranium maculatum. I haven't said much about ferns, but they also provide really nice structure. And so I have a number of ferns because they just make it look woodsy to me. But I'm not sure, obviously that they're not flowering plants, so they don't have nectar or pollen and so on. Well, they have spores, but not pollen. Technically, they're different. Whoops, I'm all the way up there. There we go. Okay, Lobelia syphilitica is wonderful. It blooms, in the summer when not much. It will spread really quickly. Baptisia is false indigo. Again, beautiful shrubs. I remember I saw these for the first time at Adkins and had to grow them. Cardinal flower, very tolerant and adaptable, grows in all kinds of sun and shade conditions. Hummingbirds go crazy over it, as you can imagine. Algeratina is snake root, white snake root. Also easy to grow, will take over. It very spreads very easily, but it's sometimes you need that. Ginger, right? Asarum canadense, again, a really nice ground cover. I have big patches in very dry areas under the beech trees where most things will not grow. These guys go crazy. Amsonia is dogbane, beautiful. I have a big patch of this in the rain garden. It's very happy there. Wood aster, right? Or this is cordifolia. There's two different wood asters. One has cordate leaves, one has normal shaped leaves. And this will grow anywhere, sun, shade, dry, wet. It's really adaptable, and it is very pretty when it's blooming. Obviously, goldenrods, there's many, many different species. This is one where the variety that's sold is Little Lemon, and that's not from a species that's native around here. So you have to be careful what you're getting. New England aster, you can see it's got a bumblebee on it, but very pretty plant blooming in the fall. And that's the other thing you want to think about is these things should be, a lot of these things I've showed you are spring ephemerals. What does that mean? It means that they come out and they flower all in the time before the leaves put out their trees. I mean, the trees put out their leaves, sorry. So Virginia bluebells is a spring ephemeral. Bloodroot up above there, sanguinaria, is it's in the poppy family and has this awesome bloody red sap, or whatever. And it is also a spring ephemeral. There are tons of different phloxes, and they're wonderful. They grow easily, they grow well. Some of them need more sun than others, but they really spread and are just magnificent. Chelone, which is turtle heads, they're in my rain garden, and they're very happy there. Many, many different species of violets, some native, some introduced. I try to get rid of the non-native ones. Tradescantia, spiderwort, another amazing, good kind of part sun plant, and alum plant, heucheras. Again, I would say pretty unkillable. I'm looking over at you, Karen. Okay, it came back. There we go. Yeah, very unkillable, the heucheras. Just a few more. Obviously, our state flower, Rudbeckia hirta, which is the black-eyed Susan. I love the oats. I think they're really pretty. Nobody seems to eat the seeds, but I don't know. Pycnanthum is mountain mint. Be careful, beware, right? It will take over your home. It really is invasive, and any mint, right, is like that. Mimulus is another pretty one, and Mayanthemum racemosum is false Solomon seal, another really pretty plant that I like. All right, so those are the good guys. The bad guys, these are the ones that you just have to take the time to get rid of. Nandina, I think we all know that it's putatively that those berries are poisonous. I read different things about that. English ivy is a nightmare. And the hard part about English ivy is your neighbors probably have it. And it will always be coming into your yard from your neighbor's yard. You just got to bite the bullet and pull it every year. All the privets are bad news. Euonymus, bad news. Butterfly bush. Oh, but my butterflies love it. Yeah, but insects don't love it. And so therefore, it's not the best choice. I get into fights with people about butterfly bush all the time. Japanese bittersweet, the American bittersweet, right? You don't want the Oriental or Japanese, but the American bittersweet is quite lovely and does get used by a lot of birds. Bradford pear, I think we all know that story. The honeysuckles, I already mentioned. Barberry, the wisterias, knotweed, inside a few more, bad news, right? These are what I would say are the unkillable 14 for shade. And I think we can post these. Maybe we can post these on the website, these lists, so that people can have them. But these are my, I showed pictures of most of these, so I'm not going to spend time on them. Obviously, if I had a picture of it, it's thriving in my yard, which means it's unkillable. That's kind of how I got to that point. For sun, again, these guys really need the sun. I don't have a lot of sun, I have to say. I have never been able to get bee balm to be happy in my yard. I think you really need a lot of sun for it, and I don't have it. Or maybe I'm just bad at growing bee balm. part sun, part shade. There's a lot of things in this basket. Again, lots of lists online and other places, but these are the ones that I really love. Black baneberry in particular and blue cohosh are really wonderful for those dry, shady spots where nothing will grow. Books, lots of books. I brought all of these books with me and I can talk about them. Again, Bringing Nature Home is the Doug Ptolemy book, which I love. The Audubon Society Guide is really more for if you're doing 50 acres. The key with books is you have to know where that person is coming from, right? Some people will say, like this one in the middle, which is the National Wildlife Federation. They have great stuff on their websites, but it's attracting birds, butterflies, and other backyard wildlife. That doesn't mean it's native, right? It means that they're going to tell you how to attract things. And many of the plants that they suggest are not native. So you have to be careful about your terms and who you're, humane gardening is not necessarily native gardening. So you got to decide what matters to you and what you want to do. Many resources. I will, again, these are all on the handout that we're going to post on the website. I will just say one of my absolute favorites is this blog called Nuts for Natives. It's great. It's just a great blog written by somebody really smart who knows their plants, knows their science, and it's nice. The most of the ones up there are Facebook groups, which I love, although sometimes I have to write an enraged reply saying, no, actually, that's wrong. But they're very well-meaning, wonderful people asking really good questions. And ultimately, it's like the bird listservs. Ultimately, the right answer emerges, right? So lots and lots of things that are out there. But again, the Maryland Plant Atlas and the MarylandBiodiversity.com are really great ones. Lots of things going on, sales, vendors, seeds. Again, I'm not a seed person. My husband does do seeds from Ernst and Prairie Moon. I think he likes Ernst better. We recently bought 100 trees from the State Tree Nursery. He's doing restoration work on his 20 acres in Charles County. So all those little tiny trees are going to go to Charles County. And they are tiny trees, but they are really lovely species and, great things. Chesapeake Natives is having their sale this weekend. There's a couple of other sales this weekend. The handout has those. Again, environmental concern and Earth Sangha are really about restoration work. Kohler Nurseries is a funny one because actually he is a guy who I taught high school biology with in the Virgin Islands in 1982. And it turned out he's in Maryland and grows native plants. It's really a small world. Bloombox is an interesting one. It's new. It's a delivery service. They actually work with local growers. So your stuff comes from just over the Pennsylvania border. So it's not exactly local, but it's pretty close. They have a really nice set of natives, and sometimes they have great sales. Again, all the rest of these vendors are all at one of my favorite things, which is the Northern Alexandria Native Plant Sale, which is coming up. Can you hand me that piece of paper right there? Yes. And I can tell you the date of the Northern Alexandra. Sorry, I need my glasses. So at the Arboretum, there's a sale on the 25th. Chesapeake Natives is having a sale on the 26th. Northern Alexandria Native Plant Sale is on April 29th. Locust Grove is doing their thing on May 20th and 21st. Adkins Arboretum, orders are due by March 30th. Pickup is in late April. And those are the ones that I know of. But the Maryland Native Plant Society has a really nice list of plant sales, and they update it. And they actually have a plant sale, but I don't know when that is yet. If you don't want to do this work, both Love and Carrots and Lauren's Garden Service do natives. They know they can come in and weed, and they know what's a native and what isn't. That's the problem. Great. That's the problem with most gardening services, right? Is they're not going to know what's native and what isn't. The downside to both of these services is they're both women-owned, wonderful businesses. My husband works with Love and Carrots for his beehives. Through him, you can get a beehive in your yard if you're willing to pay the small fortune. It is really expensive, but they do great work. Mount Cuba, I've actually never been, but I'm going in. They open April 14th, and I can't wait to go. Bowman's Hill is up in Pennsylvania. I think Adkins, everybody knows, is in Caroline County. They have a great native plant sale and great, plantings. Tri-state stone, I already talked about, and I think we're almost done here. Okay. So you've all seen lists like this, right? All these things that we can do to help birds. Well, the great thing about gardening with native plants is you can knock out, 5 of these all at once, right? It'll help you avoid pesticides, remove invasive plants. You can leave the large, lose your lawn, and plant natives. And next month, we're going to learn about making windows safer. So you're going to knock out half of them, more than half of them. But honestly, I think that's the really important thing. And I have lately had a change of heart, and I'm now spending the small fortune that it takes to buy bird safe coffee, because I realize that's where our migrants are. And I'm just biting the bullet. All right, this is my, I have to put my thanks, Aldo, because part of what I had was a son who didn't mind helping his mom in the yard. He's now 28 and lives in Maine, but he did a lot of digging. I can't tell you how many times he went to Tri-State Stone with me and shoveled stone and carried big rocks. And no, Aldo, I don't want it there. I want the rock over here. No, honey, actually, do you mind moving it over there? Could you dig this hole for me? I really want this path to have a French drain underneath. He was wonderful. Now, I did pay him, and what teenager doesn't want money? But still, he did it with good humor, and he's an oyster farmer now in Maine. But anyway, so here's the last things. Good gardeners kill plants. We do. So don't be afraid of that, right? Push yourself. Go to the edge. And if they don't live, well, okay, you now know that you can't put that plant there. The other thing that it took me years to learn, and I'm embarrassed to say as someone who took 2 years of horticulture in college, you can actually do all those horticultural things to natives. You can pinch them, you can prune them, you can do all that stuff. My Joe Pye weeds in one place, I don't want them 6 feet tall. So I pinch them back when they're little and they branch. So remember that you can use all those gardening techniques. You might have to move a plant 3 or 4 times to find the right microhabitat. Don't be afraid of this. It's really hard. The other thing is, because native plants are native and they produce seeds that are viable. I mean, let's remember, most cultivars end up being sterile. They don't produce seeds. They don't move around, but the natives do. So you never know where. Every spring is an adventure because you don't really know where they're going to end up. But you just have to embrace that. Resist the urge to neaten up. You have to embrace the fact that your yard looks like sparrow habitat for most of the year, right? All kind of brushy and shrubby and brown, except for those wonderful months starting now and going up until November, where it's spectacular. Don't try to do all your weeding at once. This is what I love about telework. I walk out at lunchtime and I weed for 10 minutes almost every day. And you know what? It adds up and you actually get it done, as opposed to saying, okay, today I must weed, and spending the entire day weeding, which will make you crazy and make your back hurt. And I believe that is it. Yes. So thank you all very much. And I think we have a little time for questions. You want to put it so we can see people? All right, questions, comments? Yes. That's the beautiful thing. In the early spring, when you really want to be cleaning up, that's a really great time because nothing else is green. The ivy's green, the other invasives are all green, the other invasives are all green. So now is the time to go out and pull those invasives, because you won't get them confused with everything else. And the other thing is, it's gross, but if you have like a ton of English ivy, you probably have rats. Just saying. So it's another reason to get rid of the English ivy. Yes. Good. I see a lot of it on the listservs for other counties. And actually, Montgomery County has a new pesticide law as well. That's pretty good, although it's a little vague. I'm still trying to find out exactly what it means. But I think, we are lucky in Montgomery County in a lot of ways. The other thing that people do, I hear, is if you put grass paths around your messy natives, you can just say, oh yeah, they're flower beds. People tell me that they've gotten away with a lot that way. Yes, sir. You don't know where it came from, right? If you're willing to buy that really expensive stuff from Maine, I forget the brand, but you just don't know. And even when the county used to produce leaf grow, I was always a little suspicious because who knows what gets picked up with the leaves that go to the curb that the county then turned into leaf grow. It's just a matter of, it did stuff with a lot of chemicals get mixed into that. I don't know. Was that some of the wood treated in some way? Does it have fungus in it? It always has fungus in it. Oh, I bought chocolate cocoa bean mulch from American Plant, and I loved it because I thought it was so wonderfully smelling in the sun. And then about 2 weeks later, it got completely covered with this purple fungus. Who knows what that was? So you just don't know what you're bringing into your yard.
Hey, Francesca, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Paul. Could you, great presentation. I echo what a lot of the comments are saying, just powerhouse presentation. Thank you so much. Could you please repeat the question? We can't hear it on the
I'm
Zoom.
so sorry. The question was about
worries.
Mulch. I apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
Oh,
And I'm
you're
just saying,
welcome.
if you're bringing in mulch, you just never know what else you're bringing in. But yeah, I don't want to put the Whitman High School mulch sale out of business. Other questions? What do I do about poison ivy? Technically, if it's in a part of your yard where no one goes, it's fabulous. Birds love it. But if it's someplace where you're going to walk, you just put a mask on, put gloves on, and pull it out. But it is native, and it is something that birds love. So I have some in a back corner, kind of beyond my compost pile where nobody ever goes. And frankly, it's keeping the bamboo out. So I'm leaving it, but I understand that people all can't do that. It was, what do you do about poison ivy was the question. Sorry. Okay, in the chat.
First question was, how big is the speaker's yard?
Oh, my lot is 12,000 square feet. It's not a big lot. My house is not big. So the house is probably, 3,000 square feet. So it's, no, probably not even that. Probably 1,800 square feet. So I do have a lot of yard for that. The houses across the street from me, the starter castles, are 6,000 square foot houses on 7,000 square foot lots. It's absurd, but they don't want yards. I think it's hysterical because I have one across 2 yards from me that I look at their backyard and I've never seen anyone in that yard in 5 years. But they cut down this beautiful white pine that had fish crows nesting in it. I'm just like devastated. Ugh. Anyway, next question.
What rain garden plants do well in shade?
Oh, what rain garden? You know what? I would say go to the Rainscapes website, Rainscapes Rewards. They have fabulous lists. They have fabulous manuals. They have a ton of information that will be quite precise. My rain garden happens to be in the sun, so I don't know off the top of my head. But if you want to email me, I'll look it up for you. But the Rainscapes Rewards website is really good.
So pot plants that might be good for native pot plants that will do well in pots that could birds.
Okay, so not the ones you smoke. Sorry. Although birds might like those. I don't know. Everything that I've ever tried has done well in a pot, I have to say. I am one of those people that her, eyes are bigger than her garden. So I end up in the fall with tons of things that I haven't planted yet. And I tuck them into pots for the winter and they all come back in the spring and are great. And I just at some point move them out into the yard ultimately. But really, I most things will do quite well in a pot. And that's a great way to start is, 3 pots on your front porch steps. Try it. You'll get to know the plants. They'll get to know you. And then you have a better sense of who they are and what they do. And then you can move them into the right space in your yard.
I think that might be, several people asked about the pots and the size of the yard. There's the question of where they can get the slides. We are going to post the talk on Vimeo on through our website. For the slides,
what I'll do is I'll just reduce them to the lists because I think that's what people really want. And I will make a smaller, because otherwise this would be a bear to download. Yeah, the whole presentation will be there to watch, but if somebody wants to download those lists, I'll make a mini presentation of the list slides, and then people can download that and not have to download everything.
Yeah, if you make a PDF, then we can put
Yeah.
that up on the website. But I think I'm also, since I'm so impressed with this talk, I'm going to put this, if possible, on our website directly as well as on Vimeo. So they'll have another option to download it.
And, you know, the other thing is, I mean, I love doing it, but this was a lot of work to put this together. So if you have other audiences, a garden club, I mean, you know, homeowners association, the neighborhood, I'm happy to give it again somewhere, because to me, this is my gospel. That's appropriate since we're in a church. So I'm, you know, happy to give this talk to other groups if you know of other people that it would be appropriate for, or who might benefit or enjoy it. So thank you. Thank you. And hi, Tim Benner. I didn't even know you were a birder.
I am, as it turns out.
As it turns out, we'll have to go out and walk around EPA one day.
Sure, sounds good.
That concludes the meeting. Is that correct? Okay, so see you in April. I'm going to end the meeting now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.